Amazing encounter. A black maid's touching sign language transforms CEO's perspective. Revealed. Ruth's hands moved deftly, each sign tumbling gracefully through the air as she pressed her fingers against her thumb, forming the letters that expressed what she felt. "I love you," she shared with Jamal, who could only hear her heart through the warmth of her smile. Today, the autumn leaves rustled whimsically outside their modest apartment, contrasting sharply with the cold glass confines of Tom's corporate world. Their laughter was a refuge in a city draped in steel. Who would think a maid's gesture could ripple into the life of a man entrenched in profit margins and balance sheets? As she prepared to head to her second job, Ruth felt the familiar weight of two roles crush her shoulders. Balancing motherhood and work was not just a juggling act, it was a fight against despair. For a fleeting moment, she allowed herself to imagine a future where her efforts would culminate in something more. The sign language classes for Jamal fueled her hope, yet the reality of the relentless grind consumed her thoughts. She would be more than a maid. She'd be a beacon for her son, guiding him in a world of silence. Inside the high-rise, Tom paced in his corner office, glued to his screen where numbers danced chaotically, each one whispering promises of success. His phone chirped incessantly, an unyielding reminder that the world would keep spinning on the axis of deals and negotiations. He wanted to connect, to reach beyond the sterile confines of his existence, yet the expectations locked him tighter in a gilded cage. He dismissed the staff, including Ruth, as mere cogs in his corporate machinery, unseen and unappreciated. Then, like a sharp intake of breath, he overheard her laughter weaving through the silence. Curious, Tom trailed softly to the hallway. What he witnessed jolted him. Ruth was teaching Jamal, her fingers flying as they communicated in a language that didn't require sound. The sight sparked an unfamiliar longing inside him, a desire for genuine understanding, for human connection that transcended spreadsheets. But as Ruth explained the nuances of her new communication with her son, Tom felt the coldness of his success wrap around him. She was the embodiment of resilience, her struggles casting shadows against the luxurious walls he had built around himself. What did he even know of her life? The dichotomy of their existences gripped him with unease. Each conversation with her felt like a mirror, reflecting back his underwhelming dreams sacrificed at the altar of ambition. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos.
And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. But just as he began to explore this unexpected connection, the clouds turned dark over Ruth's job. Whispers of a scandal brewed in the boardroom, and suddenly she faced the possibility of unfair dismissal. The weight of impending injustice crashed down upon Tom, demanding he had to choose: defend Ruth or scramble to protect his own reputation. The tremor in his stomach was palpable as he faced circumstances where loyalty could cost him everything he had built. Ruth's eyes bore into him during a conversation, questioning whether he could truly change. Could he challenge his world? Did he even want to? Doubts roiled within him, clashing with the emerging connections of compassion. As the decision loomed closer, so did the risk of losing the only genuine bond he had felt in years. Tom's breath quickened, his heart racing against the confines of his ambition. Would he step into the light of moral obligation, or retreat, fearful of the shadows looming around him? The weight of his dilemma hung heavy in the air, forcing both him and Ruth to reckon with a choice that could alter the very fabric of their lives. Tom stood at the edge of his office, the city sprawling below him, a vast expanse of glass and steel that mirrored the barriers within himself. He glanced at the emails piling up, each one demanding attention, each one a reminder of the life he chose. Yet, in stark contrast, Ruth's voice echoed in his mind, a gentle strength that beckoned him to break free from his self-imposed shackles. He thought of her laughter with Jamal, the rawness of their connection. That moment had ignited something within him, a faint glimmer of light trying to push through layers of corporate darkness. His heart pounded with the weight of his indecision. The choice before him felt monumental. Align himself with Ruth, risking the security he had worked so hard to build, or remain a prisoner of ambition, complicit in a system that thrived on exploitation. Suddenly, the intercom buzzed, fracturing the silence. It was Derek, his right-hand man, requesting a moment. Tom took a deep breath, steeling himself for the inevitable conversation that would come. As he stepped back into the familiar confines of his office, the air shifted. Derek's demeanor was upbeat, but Tom could sense a hidden undertone, a current of apprehension just below the surface. "Tom, we need to discuss the situation with the cleaning staff," Derek said, leaning slightly on the polished surface of the conference table. "With the rumor spreading, we might need to consider restructuring. It wouldn't hurt us to distance ourselves from any potential fallout, right?" The implications of Derek's words hit Tom with a wave of nausea. Was this all that mattered? Business first, feelings later? He recalled Ruth's smile, her calm determination as she taught Jamal a language so often overlooked. The thought of casting her aside felt like a dagger twisting in his gut. "Tell me more about the rumors," he urged, forcing himself to focus, to listen. He needed to know what was at stake, not just for the company, but for Ruth. Derek launched into details, but Tom's mind drifted. Images of Ruth, animated and full of life while teaching her son, lingered at the forefront of his thoughts. There was courage in her defiance against an oppressive system. She didn't merely survive, she thrived in the cracks of it. Could he mirror that courage, step outside the safety net he had woven, and plunge into a world where choices aligned with character instead of profit? The dilemma churned within him, growing heavier by the second. And suddenly he realized that his ambition had morphed into a shield, hiding him from the risk of authenticity. "Tom?" Derek's voice broke through his reverie, a hint of impatience creeping in. "You can't let this get personal." "Why not?" Tom interjected, his voice sharper than intended. "Why should it stay impersonal? Aren't we humans first before we're employees?" Derek looked taken aback, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. Tom had stirred something, a ripple in the fabric of their business facade. But the truth was undeniable. The urgency to act grew louder within him. He couldn't ignore what was happening with Ruth. It was time to explore the deeper connections that existed outside the spreadsheets, beyond the limits of his corporate life. He motioned for Derek to follow him, determination setting his stride. This was more than just a decision, it was a personal evolution. They would confront the rumors. Ruth deserved better, and if he couldn't do it for himself, he would do it for her. As they descended towards the lobby, Tom felt the weight of glass and steel pressing behind him. But the fresh air ahead whispered of potential paths he had yet to explore. Would he find the strength to stand against the tide and defend Ruth? The moment of truth loomed ahead, uncertain and electrifying, pulling him onward. Just as they approached the exit, Tom caught sight of Ruth's unmistakable figure standing outside the building, searching the faces passing by, expression clouded with concern. In that instant, he realized the stakes had escalated beyond financial implications. This was about integrity, about everything he had stifled in his quest for success. Would he embrace the vulnerability of standing beside her, or would he retreat into the familiar safety of his corporate fortress? The decisions ahead would forge his identity, reshape his understanding of success, and challenge him to redefine the man he aspired to be. The air thickened with unspoken truths as he stepped toward her, heart pounding with the imminent confrontation he knew they would face together. Tom's feet felt rooted to the ground as he approached Ruth, her features a mix of hope and uncertainty. She caught his eye, a flicker of recognition lighting her face, then quickly dissolved into concern again. The moment hung thick in the air, laden with unvoiced complexities and the path ahead that beckoned. He felt the urgency of his decision pressing down like a heavy weight. Every second in this tense standoff was a reminder of the contrasting choices before him. He could feel the pull toward the well-rehearsed corporate world that promised stability, but the sight of Ruth in that moment was a lifeline pulling him back to a world he had long ignored. "We need to talk," he finally said, his voice steady yet laced with an intensity that belied his inner turmoil. Ruth nodded, her posture shifting slightly as she prepared herself for whatever might come next. "About what happened," she replied, her voice calm despite the gravity of the situation. "No," Tom said, shaking his head. "It's not just about that. It's bigger." He gestured back toward the office, and with it the corporate machine in which he had been trapped. Every calculated move he made for the sake of profits now seemed absurd against the sincerity he felt coming from Ruth. "I want to understand your perspective, not just for you, but for everyone." Ruth paused, considering him. "You mean it?" She looked skeptical, and he couldn't blame her. His past choices had not exactly exemplified a willingness to engage deeply with the people in his life. "I do." The words felt good coming out, a release of tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. "Then let's sit down." Ruth led him to a nearby park bench, the city roiling with its usual activity around them, yet here, in this moment, there was a strange stillness. As they sat, the conversation unfolded. Ruth spoke animatedly about her experiences, her struggles, her triumphs, the cultural nuances she preserved while navigating an often hostile world. Tom listened intently, feeling layers of understanding peel away the surface of his self-interest. She opened his eyes to the systemic barriers that loomed like skyscrapers before those who lacked privilege, and with every story his resolve deepened. What if we changed things? What if we made it personal instead of just a corporate strategy? Tom found himself saying, fueled by a burgeoning ambition that focused on human connection rather than profit margins. "What do you mean?" Ruth's eyes widened with intrigue, a spark igniting between them. "I mean confronting the status quo. We could advocate for the cleaning staff, advocate for everyone. It's already happening, but I want to help champion it, together." The words rolled off his tongue, feeling both audacious and liberating. Ruth raised an eyebrow, visibly taken aback. "That's risky." "It is," Tom acknowledged, swallowing hard as he faced the embedded fears of his corporate conditioning. "But what's the point of all this success if it doesn't lead to something meaningful?" In that moment, a part of Tom felt reborn, as if his prior self, bound to spreadsheets and numbers, could be shed in favor of a more substantial existence. Ruth studied him for a heartbeat, a mix of hope and skepticism swirling in her gaze. "Okay," she finally said, determination cloaking her voice. "But it can't just be talk. We need to take action." Tom's heart raced. He could feel the change pulse within him, igniting a new ambition. Yet another question squirmed in the back of his mind. Would he have the courage to confront not just the external systems that chained them, but also the internal skepticism that threatened to drive them apart? The moment felt pivotal, yet choices loomed large ahead. Could their partnership drive the change that was desperately needed, or would the complexities of their worlds tear them apart? The first steps lay before him, tempting yet daunting in their implications. While a new path opened its arms, shadows of his past loomed closer than ever. questioning if he could indeed follow through and redefine not just his career, but his identity. With the sun beginning to set, Tom knew there was no turning back. How far would he go to reshape his life, to stand alongside Ruth in not just support, but as an active ally? A sudden thought struck him, a dawning realization that the very system he had thrived in might resist what he was about to initiate. The moment was charged, filled with both hope and hesitation. The new alliance felt precarious, and he understood the need for a strategy to infiltrate the corporate fortress. Moreover, would he really have the resolve to fuel this fire and face the inevitable backlash? So, he said slowly, where do we begin? The urgency of Tom's words hung in the air like a challenge, compelling Ruth to lean forward. We start by understanding what we're really up against, she said, her voice gaining strength and clarity. It's not just the people at the top, it's the entire structure that supports them. Tom felt a stirring of discomfort. The architecture of his career had been built on the very foundations she was dismantling with her words. What do you suggest? He asked, his mind racing between skepticism and newfound resolve. Let's gather stories, testimonies from those often overlooked, like our cleaning staff or those working in support roles. They are the backbone of this place, but their voices are rarely heard. We could create a presentation that highlights their everyday struggles and contributions. The idea ignited something within him, a signal of rebellion against the sterile spreadsheets that had defined his professional life. I can help with that, he nodded, a sudden sense of capacity washing over him. But we need more than just stories. We need to think strategically about how to present this to the executive board.
Ruth looked impressed, her skepticism mellowing into something like partnership. Exactly. We'll need to frame their narratives in a way that resonates with the decision-makers, compelling them to act on what they hear. We'll need data, Tom interjected, quantitative evidence to show the financial benefits of investing in support staff, lower turnover rates, increased satisfaction, and productivity levels. I have access to reports that could help. As the words flowed, Tom sensed a shift within him. He was no longer seeing Ruth as merely a bridge to a better understanding. Instead, she had become a co-conspirator, a partner in this venture that teetered on the boundary of risk and reward. What about resistance? Ruth asked, a shadow passing over her features. There are bound to be pushbacks. This change isn't going to come easy. Tom ran a hand through his hair, feeling a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. I've faced opposition before, managing crises in the boardroom, negotiating contracts, but this feels different. I'm not just pitching a product or a profit margin. It's about people, lives. But people can be just as stubborn as profits, Ruth replied, her tone cautious. What if your colleagues dismiss us? What if they label us as idealists or radicals? Then we'll prove them wrong, Tom shot back, determination surging in his chest. But beneath that intense resolve simmered an undercurrent of doubt. What if he wasn't fully prepared for this new realm, a space where compassion was the currency? Would his business acumen translate into meaningful change? As they discussed their next steps, the evening sun dipped lower, casting elongated shadows on the ground. Every idea they generated felt like stepping farther from the sterile confines of the corporate office and deeper into a frontier of uncertainty. It thrilled him and frightened him in equal measure. Let's set a goal, Ruth proposed, sparking a flurry of inspiration in Tom's mind. We can present our findings in the next quarterly meeting. No more waiting. Agreed, he said, feeling exhilaration coalesce with the weight of responsibility. But we need to plan our approach meticulously. It can't just be a presentation. It has to evoke change. We need to prepare for questions, for obstacles, things we haven't even thought of yet. Ruth smiled, the light in her eyes reflecting a shared commitment. We'll face this together, and whatever comes, we'll be ready. It's about more than just us. It's about giving everyone a voice. As they finalized their plans, Tom felt an unfamiliar thrill course through him, marking the dawn of a new chapter. Yet echoes from within whispered caution, a reminder of the hesitations still lurking in his mind. He had navigated the corporate landscape for years, but this venture promised to clash violently with the customary norms he had previously accepted. Would his courage withstand the trials ahead?
The world he intended to reshape was fraught with complexities he could not foresee, poised to challenge every conviction he had held. So, we truly have the potential to make history? Tom pondered aloud. Ruth leaned in closer. You'll see, but remember, it starts with taking that first step and the next. Her expression turned serious. Just be ready for the fallout. Tom's heart raced at the thought, realizing the path ahead would not just reshape his professional identity, but would forge him anew. He took a deep breath, committing to the complexities that awaited. Together, they stood on the precipice of change. Would he have the stamina to endure the pushbacks and surprises? Could his newfound alliance with Ruth withstand the mounting pressures of corporate culture? The answer loomed like the darkening sky overhead, charged with electric tension and the weight of uncharted possibilities. "Tomorrow we start," he declared, his voice steady despite the uncertainty within. With the dawn of a new day, Tom's determination lit a fire within him, urging him to take the first steps into the unknown. The echoes of yesterday's conversation replayed in his mind as he settled into his office, his desk cluttered with spreadsheets that now felt increasingly irrelevant. Today, his focus had shifted. He needed to be a catalyst, not a bystander. The morning light streamed through the glass walls, but the fixtures of his corporate habitat felt more daunting than invigorating. He could almost hear the walls whisper the old rules of silence and compliance, the corporate mantra that thrived on keeping discomfort at bay. But deep down, he sensed an awakening. The discomfort was necessary for transformation. Tom picked up the phone, a tool he had relied on too often for calculated negotiations and impersonal exchanges. But today it would serve a more profound purpose. He recalled the faces of the cleaning staff he had often walked past, those invisible pillars of the organization. He resolved to reach out to them personally, to begin collecting those overlooked stories Ruth had mentioned. Their lives could no longer be just background noise in his corporate symphony. It was time for their melodies to emerge. Dialing the number of a familiar face, a custodian named Eva, he felt a knot of anticipation twist in his stomach. He had never would have thought about speaking directly with her about her experiences. What could he possibly say that would bridge the gap between their worlds? The ringing tone felt deafening. "Hello?" Eva's voice brought him out of his spiraling thoughts. "Hi, Eva. It's Tom from finance." He forced himself to sound casual despite the wave of vulnerability crashing over him. "Tom, what can I do for you?" Her tone was polite, full of the warmth he associated with her presence in the office. "I'd like to arrange a time to sit down and talk. I want to hear about your experiences here, your perspective." There was a brief silence, and in that moment, Tom felt the weight of his decisions pressing down on him. Then she responded, "Sure, I'd be happy to share. When would you like to meet?" Tom felt a surge of relief mingled with the daunting prospect of the conversation ahead. This wasn't just gathering data. It was a chance to confront his own biases, an opportunity to unlearn what he thought he knew. As he hung up, he couldn't shake the realization of his own discomfort. What if Eva's stories were too intense, too painful to hear? Was he prepared to shoulder that weight? The idea of actually understanding their struggles was frightening, but also liberating. It sparked something deep within him, an urgency to dismantle his privilege. After a few hours, Tom headed out to the break room. The air was thick with the aroma of coffee and chatter, but his mind was still centered on his mission. Spotting Ruth, he walked over, energized by the growing purpose igniting his day. "Have you had a chance to think about our plan, Tom?" she asked, her eyes bright with anticipation. "I have," he replied, his voice steady. "I'm reaching out to Eva, the cleaning staff member, to hear her experiences firsthand. We need to start building those narratives, and I want to be part of the stories we highlight." Ruth smiled, a look of approbation washing over her features. "That's a great start. Remember, the change we're after isn't just about data, it's about understanding lives." As Tom left the break room, his heart drummed with measurable urgency, but beneath it lay an ever-present whisper of doubt. Despite his convictions, an undercurrent tugged at his consciousness. Would the insights he uncovered hold the power to counteract the culture of silence? Later that evening, after finishing an overwhelming number of emails, Tom stared out his office window. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the world in shades of uncertainty and potential. He couldn't shake off the anxiety that swelled in the back of his mind. Every encounter with Eva could shatter the comfortable structures he had leaned on for years. At that moment, a profound realization struck him. He was not merely initiating a presentation. He was embarking on a transformative journey that would challenge his value system. As he closed his laptop, the weight of his intentions felt heavy yet invigorating. Would his commitment to this new path ultimately lead to his professional undoing or a renaissance? Tomorrow would be pivotal, both for Eva and for himself. It loomed ahead, uncertain and charged with potential, an opportunity poised at the precipice of change. His evening ritual of preparing for the next day could wait. This journey was just beginning, and the stakes had never been higher. Tom's phone buzzed with a message just before bed, a reminder of the meeting with Ruth in the morning. "Prepare for everything," it read, a simple phrase that settled like a dark promise in his heart. The tension in his chest tightened anew. Would he be able to listen as much as he wished to speak? Would the voices of the unheard truly shift the tides of corporate culture, or would they echo back the silence he feared? Tomorrow's meeting would be more than just a presentation. It would be an unveiling of truths he was not yet ready to confront. Tom found himself standing on a delicate line, a balancing act delicately poised between fear and hope. He took a deep breath, carrying that tension with him as he drifted off to sleep, uncertain of the revelations to come. The sun peeked through the blinds as Tom opened his eyes, though the anxiety he had drifted to sleep with still clung to him like a heavy fog. Today was the day he would meet Eva, a symbolic step into uncharted territory. He understood that this encounter had the potential to shift not only his perception, but also the paradigm of his corporate world. He went through his morning routine methodically, but the gravity of his intentions lingered in his thoughts. As Tom dressed, he considered the narratives that had previously escaped his understanding, stories of resilience and struggle hidden in the bustling corridors he had navigated for far too long without seeing. After finishing breakfast, Tom made his way to the office, each step resonating with both trepidation and purpose. In the elevator, he stood alongside colleagues immersed in their phones, each one oblivious to the internal conflict consuming him. Tom felt like an island amid a sea of corporate indifference, a realization that pushed him deeper into his convictions. Reaching his office, he took a moment to gather his thoughts before facing the inevitable meeting with Ruth. What did he hope to achieve in his dialogues with Eva? Did he honestly believe he could handle the truth of her experiences? He took a deep breath, steadying himself as he envisioned the emotional landscape before him. "Tom," Ruth's voice jolted him back to the moment. She appeared brimming with energy, a stark contrast to Tom's inner turmoil. "Ready for today?" Tom forced a smile, but unease flickered in his expression. I am, but I'm also a little apprehensive about everything. That's natural, she replied, leaning against the doorframe. Remember, listening is just as important as sharing your own thoughts. You're not just seeking their stories, you're opening yourself to their realities. Right, he replied, but his mind raced over the implications. Listening felt like standing on the edge of a precipice, an invitation to confront potentially uncomfortable truths that might require his fundamental values to be reevaluated. As the time approached for his meeting with Eva, Tom's palms became clammy with nervous anticipation. At the designated time, he made his way to the break room, doubts swirling in his head, pleading with him to retreat. How could he expect to engage with someone whose life experiences so drastically differed from his own? The door swung open, and there was Eva, her presence a calming contrast to Tom's frenetic energy. "Hi, Tom," she said, her warm smile easing some of his tension. "Thanks for reaching out." "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," he replied, inviting her to sit down at a small table adorned with coffee stains and modest decor. As they engaged in conversation, Tom found himself instinctively leaning in, desperate to absorb her words. Eva spoke of her daily challenges, long hours that blurred into exhaustion, feelings of invisibility amidst the corporate machine, her dreams set aside for the sake of practicality. With every story, Tom felt the layers of his own privilege being peeled away, revealing an uncomfortable vulnerability. "Sometimes it feels like people don't see us as human," Eva said thoughtfully, her voice steady yet tinged with emotion. "But we all have dreams and struggles, don't we?" Tom swallowed, grappling with the truth of her words. How had he participated in the very system that perpetuated this cycle? This wasn't mere data, it was a reflection of systemic issues he had mostly ignored in pursuit of his career. "Eva, I want to help amplify these stories," he found himself saying, intentions hardening into resolve. "We're going to create a narrative that honors everyone in our organization, including voices that often go unheard." Eva's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment, Tom saw a flicker of possibility ignite in them. The weight of the current culture was heavy, but together they might construct a foundation for change. As he left the break room, adrenaline coursed through Tom's veins. What had begun as an encounter rooted in discomfort had morphed into determination to confront the ingrained biases lurking within him. The walls of silence that had long surrounded him began to tremble, as if beckoning forward a new understanding. Yet, with each step away from that moment, uncertainty loomed. What alliances would he need to forge? What opposition might he face? The corporate landscape was a complex tapestry woven with unsaid bonds and unwritten rules. As he returned to his office, Tom's phone buzzed with a new message, a reminder of a meeting scheduled for later with senior management. The stakes were rising, but the real question lingered. Would he be able to confront the power structures that had kept these narratives at bay? His heart raced. He was ready to challenge not only the status quo, but also himself. The time had come to test the core of his beliefs and create a dialogue that dared to shake the very foundations of their corporate culture. What awaited him in that meeting, and how would he advocate for change within a framework that favored silence? The meeting with senior management loomed ahead, shadows of doubt casting themselves over Tom's thoughts. He had spent the past hour pacing the confines of his office, rehearsing key points in his mind, yet each attempt felt insufficient against the gravity of what he would propose. The stark contrast between his complacent past and the courageous future he envisioned left him unsettled, caught in a whirlpool of conviction and fear. As he entered the large conference room, its imposing presence mirrored the authority of those seated around the table. The usual banter faded into a solemn silence, eyes trained on him, anticipation hanging thick in the air. Tom took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders, urging himself to transcend the momentary hesitation. "Thank you all for being here," he started, dim echoes of his former self bubbling beneath the surface. He knew his first few words needed to pierce through the corporate mundanity, to resonate with the sense of urgency he had cultivated in his discussions with Eva. "I want to talk about the untold stories in our organization," he continued, feeling the weight of his own voice. "There's a culture of silence that ignores the experiences of many, particularly among our support staff. I've learned that amplifying these voices is not just beneficial, it's essential for our growth." A murmur traveled through the room, eyes darting between faces, some frowning, others curious. He caught Ruth's affirming nod, a flicker of solidarity amid the more skeptical gazes. Tom pressed on, unveiling the insights gained from his conversations with Eva. The vulnerabilities she had shared became a beacon of truth in his narrative, a testament to the impact of listening and understanding. "Imagine how much stronger our organization could be if we truly addressed these disparities," Tom implored, feeling emboldened with each word. "We can create programs that actively seek feedback from everyone, ensuring that every employee feels seen, valued, and empowered." But as he spoke, the anxiety that had once fueled his determination morphed into a palpable tension. He sensed resistance brewing among the senior members. Harold, CFO and the ever-practical gatekeeper of ideas, leaned forward, eyebrows furrowed. "Tom, while I understand the sentiment, how do you propose we implement this without risking operational efficiency?" The question hung heavy in the air, a challenge wrapped in pragmatism. Tom felt his heart quicken, yet he didn't retreat. "It will require a shift in our priorities, putting people at the forefront. We can streamline processes while fostering an inclusive environment. This isn't just an ideal, it's a strategy for better performance and innovation." "Or a distraction," Harold countered, honing in on the conceptual shift Tom had thrown onto the table. The murmurs of agreement from a few others made Tom's resolve waver. But just for a moment. "Distraction can only thrive within complacency," he shot back, feeling a rise of adrenaline. "We must confront the uncomfortable if we want our company to evolve." Change is often met with resistance, but standing still could cost us everything. The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. For the first time, he felt the echo of Eva's stories blend seamlessly with his own ambitions, a rallying cry against apathy. As the meeting continued, Tom began delving deeper into his vision, revealing practical steps that could be taken to facilitate this grand shift. Each proposal came rapidly, fueled by the knowledge he had gained. He could feel his old self slowly fading as he evolved into a champion for change. But as he concluded, he could see the skepticism still lingering in the room, like a thick fog yet to dissipate. The battle was far from over. His heart sank slightly at the realization that even with his newfound clarity, resistance would not vanish overnight. Walking out of the conference room, Tom felt lighter yet encumbered by the weight of the reactions he had faced. Each step echoed his urgency to not only confront these challenges, but also his own deeply seated fears about pushing for what he believed in. What alliances could he forge to strengthen his stance? Who would stand with him as he fought against the inertia of established norms? His resolve hardened into a gleaming force, yet uncertainty lay nestled in the back of his mind, whispering doubts he would need to confront head-on. Then, glancing at his phone, Tom realized he had missed a call from Eva. Her message was brief but poignant. "Let's connect. I have something important to share." Suddenly, the angles of his story shifted again, hinting at something deeper on the horizon. What awaited him in that conversation, and how might it influence his quest for change? Tom sat at his desk, fingers hovering over the keyboard as the details of the meeting replayed in his mind like a dissonant melody. Doubts swirled around him, each moment of hesitation fueling his determination. The resistance from senior management loomed like a shadow, and he knew he had to navigate those treacherous waters carefully. He had always been a cautious man, preferring the safety of established routines over the unpredictable consequences of change. Yet today had awakened something latent within him, a potent craving for authenticity. Eva's message lingered in his mind, a siren call beckoning him to explore deeper truths. Feeling a sudden rush of urgency, he picked up the phone to call her. "Tom, I'm so glad you reached out," Eva's voice greeted him, invigorated by spontaneity. "I felt that meeting didn't go as expected for you." "That's one way to put it. I thought my ideas would resonate, but instead, I met a wall of skepticism. I need your perspective," Tom admitted, his voice tinged with vulnerability. After exchanging pleasantries, Tom quickly shifted to the urgency of his mission. "I shared your stories, but it seems they fell on indifferent ears. I'm worried that my momentum is fading, and I need to strategize." Eva paused before responding. "You have the right heart, but you're fighting a culture entrenched in complacency. You need to illustrate the urgency of why change matters, not just for us as individuals, but for the company at large. Tell them why these voices should amplify the company's mission rather than conflict with it." "How can I frame it to appeal to their motivations?" Tom asked, eager to find the key that would unlock the doors of resistance. "Present numbers that reflect the correlation between engaged employees and operational efficiency. Data isn't just cold understanding, it enhances understanding when backed by passionate narratives. You're advocating for people, Tom, but you also have to capture their minds. Numbers can do that." A stirring realization began to blossom. Tom understood that he had been prioritizing the emotional aspect over the intellectual in his approach. "I need to become a bridge, to reach their hearts through logic. Thank you, Eva. I can't explain how much this means to me." As the conversation flowed, Tom started to see how he could reshape his strategy. He quickly jotted down meticulous frameworks on his notepad, merging personal narratives with statistics illustrating employee satisfaction's impact on the bottom line. After hanging up, he felt invigorated yet acutely aware of the daunting task ahead. The journey ahead promised confrontation, not just with others, but with himself. Uncertainties hugged at him, whispering about past failures and the possibility of rejection. He began pacing again, this time fueled by the flames of his newfound purpose. As he prepared to refine his presentation, the walls of his office felt stifling. An overwhelming urge to step outside propelled him from his seat. He needed clarity, and fresh air would unravel the knots in his mind. Strolling through the bustling streets, he fully grasped that every person he encountered was a potential supporter in his quest, if only he could connect their stories to his vision. For the first time, he felt each step resonating with newfound intent, reminding him that change was not merely a personal endeavor, but a shared experience that could uplift others. Just as the day began to lose its light, Tom returned to the office, ready to expand the boundaries of his proposals. He would have to confront key players directly, to challenge their complacency, armed with sharp statistics and compelling narratives. Sitting in his office, he realized he was on the verge of something formidable. The challenge ahead was monumental, yet the prospect of profound transformation coursed through him like an electric charge. And then, just as he began drafting a revised presentation, his phone buzzed again. A new message from Eva appeared, this one urgent. "Meet me tomorrow. I have a lead that could dramatically shift your perspective." Tom's pulse quickened at the thought of what that could mean. What revelation might she hold, and how might it redefine his battle? The dawn of a new phase awaited him. As Tom settled into his office chair the following morning, the anticipation from Eva's message buzzed at the edges of his consciousness. He felt both exhilarated and uncertain. What could this lead be? He couldn't help but feel that it might be the piece of the puzzle he desperately needed to galvanize the senior management team. He meticulously prepared for his meeting with her, placing those last-minute touches on his presentation. Statistics, compelling narratives, and charts populated his slides, arranged like soldiers ready for battle. Yet beneath the surface of his composed exterior, a seed of doubt unfurled. Was he truly equipped to confront the titans of complacency? Each move he made could lead to potential rejection, or even more intimidating, acceptance that thrust him into the spotlight he had shunned for so long. After what felt like an eternity, there came the message he had been waiting for. "I'm here," it read. He glanced at the clock, his heart quickening at the thought of these pivotal next steps. With a deep breath, he left his office, firming his resolve to meet whatever revelation lay ahead with open arms. The cafe where they agreed to meet was vibrant, yet its buzz felt muted against his focused intent. As he entered, the sense of coffee and pastries filled his senses, but his mind stayed honed in on the impending conversation. When he spotted Eva, a familiar sense of excitement washed over him. She waved him over, her eyes gleaming with enthusiasm. "Tom, I think I might have something powerful for you," she said, her tone unwavering and engaging. He followed her to a quiet corner, urgency spurring their dialogue. "What is it?" "After reflecting on your previous presentation, I recalled a study I came across during my last project. It examined the impact of diversity in leadership on company innovation. The findings were astonishing." She handed him a folder filled with details that seemed to promise a roadmap of rapid change. As he flipped through the data, Tom felt a flicker of hope igniting within him. The study's core conclusions revealed a direct correlation between diverse leadership and organizational adaptability, something his firm desperately needed. In a world fast-paced and ever-evolving, he felt buoyed by this revelation. But a nagging thought surfaced. Could he effectively present this concept to an audience unlikely to embrace such a radical shift? "Do you think they'll accept it?" he queried, a subtle tremor in his voice. Eva leaned closer, her expression unwavering. "Change often evokes skepticism, but it's your responsibility to be the bridge, to show them how this aligns with their goals. Whatever hurdles you face, you're the one who has to relate these narratives to their desires." With each word she spoke, her conviction began cracking open the icy shell of his reservations.
Discovering how to communicate these statistics mattered, and he now understood it would not be enough to simply present facts. He had to embody them, to weave his own narrative into theirs, connecting their ambitions to this new perspective. "Thank you for this. I can see how this study will enhance my approach. But what if I'm not persuasive enough?" The honesty of his doubt hung in the air like a dense fog. Eva smiled gently. "You have to own your story, Tom. Let your passion drive the presentation. Remember that those around you are looking for guidance, and they are more inclined to follow someone who believes in what they say." As they delved deeper into the implications of the research, Tom felt an awakening. Each insight kindled a passion that elevated his commitment to not just advocating for change, but embracing it as a fundamental part of his identity. The meeting wrapped up, and as they stood to leave, a profound realization settled within Tom. This journey would not just transform the organization, but himself as well. He was ready to step into the maelstrom of corporate politics with renewed confidence and purpose. As he exited the cafe, the world around him seemed sharper, infused with possibility. Yet the underlying tension remained. He needed to test this newfound approach in front of the board. Would they recognize the validity of his data, or would they dismiss it outright? With the first rays of dawn illuminating his path, Tom stepped forward, preparing to unravel the intricate tapestry of perceptions that awaited him. The moment of truth was approaching. A confrontation with the heart of his fears lay just ahead. Would he triumph or falter? The answer loomed just out of reach, waiting for him to act.
Tom stepped into the large conference room with an urgency that coursed through his veins, ready to transform from a mere participant in corporate strategies to a true advocate for change. The faces around the table, a mixture of skepticism and curiosity, would soon witness his evolution. The weight of expectation thrilled him and fueled a newfound determination that banished the shadows of self-doubt. "Thank you all for being here today," Tom began, standing tall. The silence enveloping him felt both formidable and invigorating. "I want to talk about a critical element we've overlooked, the power of diverse voices and how they can propel our company forward." He launched into the heart of his presentation. Images of Eva's stories amalgamated with the compelling data from the study she had shared, creating a comprehensive narrative that bridged the gap between the human experience and the practical realities of their corporate environment. With each statistic articulating the tangible benefits of inclusivity, he witnessed nods of acknowledgement from a few members of the board. Integrating diverse leadership can dramatically enhance our innovation and adaptability. As companies worldwide have shown, including marginalized voices isn't just ethical, it aligns directly with improved productivity and employee satisfaction, halving turnover rates and increasing overall revenue, Tom articulated, his voice steady, resonating from the depths of his conviction. For the first time, he felt as if he were not just defending a statistic, but championing a movement for a shared purpose. The hesitations that had plagued his earlier encounters now took flight, replaced with clarity of intention and authenticity. A buzz rippled through the room as he concluded his presentation, the air thick with anticipation. The moment to act is now, before we lose sight of what truly matters, our employees' voices, who form the backbone of our organization. Questions flourished amidst the tension. Harold's sharp demeanor returned, but now the edge seemed dulled by curiosity. "Tom, you make an interesting point, but how do you propose we implement this framework into our existing strategies without overwhelming our operational capabilities?" This was the moment he had been preparing for. We can start with pilot programs that test the waters. Regular feedback sessions where employees are encouraged to share their experiences will lay the groundwork for creating tailored initiatives that reflect their needs. The lines of skepticism began to shift, morphing from doubt to intrigue. Tom seized the momentum, detailing how communication and collaboration could be fostered, planting seeds of change ripe for nurturing. "We already have the foundation. It's about taking the next step to cultivate an environment where every employee feels valued. By aligning this with our growth strategy, we don't dilute our efforts, we intensify them." The dialogue progressed, each echelon of the board becoming increasingly engaged. He could sense the tide turning, a palpable shift as they began to envision the potential outcomes that lay ahead. The room was alive with conversation, and Tom's heart raced at the realization that they were reaching for a shared understanding, together. After the meeting ended, Tom lingered as senior leaders shared their thoughts, recognizing that they might not all be fully convinced yet. However, an undeniable warmth surrounded the atmosphere of newfound collaboration. Ruth approached him, eyes brimming with belief. "You did it, Tom. They listened. This is just the beginning." In the days following, Tom found himself at the epicenter of pivotal transformations within his company, collaborating closely with leaders to unveil initiatives that elevated the voices of the support staff while integrating actionable data into their strategic vision. The palpable momentum created a cultural synergy, evolving new forms that resonated across all levels of the organization. And then, one morning, while reviewing positive responses to their initiatives, he received an email from Eva. "I've been hearing amazing things about the changes you've spearheaded. I couldn't be prouder of you." Her words radiated warmth, infusing him with a sense of fulfillment he had long sought. The weight he had carried, the fears and doubts, had transformed into a hope that shone brightly. Tom stepped from his office, no longer solely a voice of numbers, but one that resonated with compassion and understanding. He walked the hallways with confidence, engaging with colleagues, discovering their stories, their struggles, aspirations, and triumphs intertwined with his own. As he gazed out towards the horizon from his office window, he recognized his journey was not just about championing change within his company. It had reshaped him in profound ways. He had conquered his fears, transformed his approach, and become a conduit for voices that had long gone unheard. Today, he stood not as just a CEO, but as an empowered ally, one who had successfully integrated the heart into the machine, navigating the delicate balance between business success and human experience, a true embodiment of change. The reality of his personal achievement settled within him, a solid confidence born from genuine connection and purpose. Tom had proven to himself that true leadership lies in using one's privilege to amplify the voices of others, an achievement worth celebrating. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for more exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm with your support. Comment below with your reactions and theories about his journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion.